Yeah, go for it.
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Design Review Board on March 21st, 2023. This meeting is called to order. Do I get to do this now?
Sure.
I'll request staff to call the roll for members who are present and not.
Okay, Board Member Alexin,
Present.
Vice Chair Kent,
Present.
Chair Kowalski,
Present.
Board Member Reggie,
Present.
Board Member Summers,
Present.
and alternate Board Member Blaney.
Present.
All right.
Next, we'll move to meeting procedures. I'd like to ask staff to address how public comment will work this evening.
Sure. So in addition to accepting written comments up to the DRB meeting, staff is accepting public comments in person at City Hall or over the telephone or via Zoom. Members of the public are invited to participate via conference call at the following phone number, 669-444-9171, with the meeting ID being 831-0781-8748#. If you're participating by telephone, wish to provide comments, please press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period for the item you would like to speak on. Once it's your turn to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. And that is the instructions.
Let me now describe meeting procedures. We will begin with a staff report for each item, followed by the applicant's presentation. Members of the public will then be invited to speak. Community members on conference call can speak when they receive the notification. They have been unmuted. Comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board will have the opportunity to ask questions of staff or the public after each segment. We will close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the board for discussion. Anyone with an urgent communication on a topic not on the agenda may address the board at this time. Please note that anything raised has not been noticed or agendized, so there'll be no discussion on these items.
Okay, so again, to comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature to comment on anything not on the agenda. If commenting by phone, please press *9. Once you hear a notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. So looking in City Hall and looking on Zoom, I am not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent calendar, which has one item, the minutes from March 7th, 2023 Design Review Board meeting. Are there any comments from the public on this item for the consent calendar?
So again, if you're on Zoom, you can press raise your hand feature, or if you're on the phone, you can press *9. Or in the public, if you want to comment on the minutes. Seeing none.
Is there someone on the board prepared to make a motion?
I am. Member Kent would like to move to approve the minutes as submitted. Member Alexin seconds.
The minutes have been approved.
Oh, wait.
Oh. Where is that on the script?
Then it's chair requests a second on this board motion. So now it's just up to me to make the roll call. Board Member Alexin.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kent.
Aye.
Chair Kowalski.
I wasn't here, so I have to not vote. Abstain.
Abstain. Okay. And just to clarify, you are able to vote on the minutes even if you're not here, but that's fine to abstain as well.
Mhm.
Board Member Reggie.
Aye.
And Board Member Summers.
Abstain.
And since Member Blaney was here as a member, Member Blaney.
Aye.
All right.
The minutes have passed. And now we'll move on to the action items on the agenda tonight. Can we have a staff report on 380 Margarita Drive?
And it's Assistant Planner Renee Nickenig. It's pulling up her presentation now.
Being mic'd now, yes, I can hear myself. Hello, everybody. Hello, board. We're reviewing 380 Margarita Drive. This is a return project that you are seeing today with a slightly more focused review, which we'll go over. So for the project history, this project was previously reviewed on November 8th last year, 2022. Following comments from the board and comments from the public, a request was made of the applicant to provide additional information, including how they would plan to address comments from the Marin Municipal Water District regarding fire suppression and water service to the site, provide color and updated renderings of the project, provide a landscape plan, a plan for proposed solar panels, if any, and a geotechnical analysis. There was also a discussion regarding the 17-foot tall wall proposed at the pool and ways to mitigate that, screen that, and additional landscaping options. In response to those comments, the applicant did provide additional information, including an analysis from Fire and Risk Alliance and Overcamp and Associates Civil Engineers addressing the comment letter from the Municipal Water District, as well as the Santa Fe City Fire Department requirements. They did provide a plan that shows that the tank for the water can be put underground, and that will be further addressed in the building permit process, which is when MMWD will re-review. They provided revised elevations and renderings, a proposal to screen the pool wall with vegetation. They are not currently showing solar panels. Again, that may come in the building permit process. And they did provide a geotechnical analysis that had been previously submitted, but was not included in the package for November 8th. So we are looking at the project again today, and to clarify, which may have not been clear in the last meeting, that what DRB is being asked to do is to provide a recommendation specifically for the over 4-foot retaining walls outside of the established building envelope, which is essentially the setback for this property, and to provide advisory comments on the additional design elements of the primary residence. The exterior wall and roof color, specifically the proposed design of the flat roof with large glass windows, also previously discussed, and the trees screening the pool wall. So showing the site plans related to the driveway retaining walls, it is the retaining walls along this, excuse the highlight red, portion of the driveway. The walls range from above grade 3 feet to just under 7 feet tall. They're made of concrete block, and they have been put in place to provide safe access to the site. The renderings show better than the previously submitted, how these walls will be visible from Margarita Drive, the access that's currently at the site, and the properties immediately below. Staff finds these walls to be supportable, as they have been reviewed by Fire and Public Works in relationship to the access road that will be safe for fire vehicles to go up to the property, and the overhead walls do provide safe access to the site. So staff does recommend that the DRB recommend approval to the zoning administrator for these walls. Additionally, we are presenting this design for additional advisory comments from the design review board, specifically related to the items that were previously discussed at the last meeting. In the last meeting, the DRB noted that the light white color that was chosen for the residence was in high contrast to the surrounding hillside. The applicant has chosen a darker color to mitigate that contrast. The darker color is better aligns with the existing colors at the site, mimics the underside of the tree canopy on site, and will blend in better. The designer board also discussed the overheight wall. Overheight, not exactly an exaggeration. So the wall here shown to retain the pool is 17 feet tall. The DRB discussed possibly stepping that wall, moving the pool to farther on the site to mitigate that height. The applicant had noted that the grade of the property would result in what they believe to be in excess of stepped walls, of terraced walls, and has chosen to screen the site with vegetation. The applicant has expressed flexibility with that vegetation choice, and what is shown here will not be the final tree choice. I'm just gonna show a few renderings right now. The DRB last meeting expressed support of the overall design of a more modern design, but did express concern with the glass walls, especially the direction that they're facing, the southeastern direction. The applicant did provide information in the materials showing a glass choice that would mitigate glare as well as energy concerns, and that will also be addressed during the building permit phase. Public comment was received prior to the meeting, both previous to noticing going out and after noticing was sent out on primary topics being site safety concerns, the tree selection related to the existing hillside guidelines, as well as the preferred native trees of the Sandersville Fire Department and MMWD, and also the location and the aspect of the ridgeline development. The site safety concerns have been addressed initially with the geotechnical analysis, but will also be addressed during the building permit phase. This phase right now in the planning stage is for the overheight retaining walls outside of the building envelope, as well as the overall design of the house for the zoning administrator. The tree selection, the DRB may comment on preferred trees, specifically, and the MMWD list, as well as the Sandersville Fire Department preferred list, has been shared with the applicant. And again, they have expressed flexibility, and staff will work with them to have a appropriate tree choice. And the ridgeline development, the Plan Development District 1808, where this location of the site is, was developed to address the ridgeline development, which prohibits building within 100 vertical feet of a ridgeline. That is taken care of with the building envelope, and the retaining walls do not encroach on that either. So to conclude the staff report, or when I can go back to some, staff is recommending that the DRB approve the overheight retaining walls outside of the building envelope, and is presenting the redesigned project again for additional advisory comments.
Does the board have questions for staff?
I have a few.
One second.
Sarah.
Sarah.
Two questions. The first one is there a color board with the physical materials?
There is not a physical color board. There is the color sample shown on the set of plans with the Benjamin Moore.
Okay. And then on the finish of the retaining walls in that red area, I think you said concrete block. When I look at the details, it looks like concrete. Is it exposed concrete, or is there a painted finish?
That has not been finalized. That can be a condition of approval. But one detail shows a concrete block and the other detail shows poured concrete. If there is a preference of the DRB for concrete block versus poured concrete, or the finish preference, it was previously discussed to paint the retaining wall the same color as the exterior of the home to blend in with the environment.
Okay, thank you.
I know this site is subject to the PD and the development agreement. And I just remember reading through it a few years back. Is there a height limit for there is a height limit specified for the building? I forget if it was a height limit above grade, or if it was a height, I think it was actually an elevation and a static elevation, but I just forget. Do you know that offhand?
There is overall, I believe offhand, I believe it's 30 feet. I can bring up the PD.
Oh,
for
no, I don't
Lottery's
need you
feet,
to bring it
but
up.
yeah.
I was just curious if I do remember there was something there. That's all. Thanks.
Are there any more questions?
I was just wondering, the window frames and mullions, are they white or are they sort of the same brown? Is there any contrast at all? Because it's represented differently on some of the renderings.
They will be a dark painted black metal. I think it's showing, I shouldn't say black, it's showing darker. It will not be white, has not been proposed, but that will be.
Are there any further questions?
I'm just curious about something, but is there an architect going to make a presentation?
The applicant had planned to join via Zoom. I do not see them on Zoom, and there is not an additional applicant.
I'm
present
just
for the
curious,
project.
Title 24, it's,
So that will all be addressed through the, excuse me, I'm sorry, you can. finish.
well, no,
Apologize.
the floor area, the openings in the buildings themselves and the rooms can't be more than 16% of your floor area?
There's nothing like that in Title 24. If they can get the measures at the bottom, if the building can get modeled and technically pass energy compliance through the modeling, then, you know, he might need really aggressive glass or aggressive insulation, but there's always some push-pull. He'll find that out when he gets his energy compliance
I
report.
just went through that and the city had to reduce my window sizes because it was more than 14% of the floor area of the room.
You need a more clever architect.
I should have hired an architect maybe.
We can talk later.
Are there any further questions to staff? And would the applicant like to provide a presentation?
So Renee, what's the name of the applicant?
Jeff, Will Kelty.
Oh, yeah,
We have
he's on
Jeff.
here.
He is on there? Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't see him.
Okay.
I apologize because it's a webinar. I apologize. Yes, he's here.
Okay, so if you want to stop sharing, I'll allow Will to speak. All right, Will, you should be able to speak now if you unmute yourself.
Hello, this is Will Kelty here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Fantastic. So thank you for taking the time to review this. And Renee, thank you for presenting that. I just wanted to join in and comment on three things. In the last meeting, I think the three takeaways for me were a concern about the above ground water tank. And we did confirm that that is not necessary, as Renee mentioned. The other two things were the color of the home itself. And Renee went and provided me with a color palette to choose from that's a list of acceptable colors. So we chose that. But as Renee mentioned, we're not tied to that color. So if the board were willing to conditionally approve it and, conditioned upon the color choice being a different color, we can live with that. And then thirdly, we did choose trees from the approved or recommended lists. But again, we would be okay with a conditional approval if the board preferred a different type of tree that was still acceptable to, the fire department and whatnot. And then just to address those last two questions, Renee was correct about that retaining wall. If there is a recommendation or conditional approval based on the retaining wall in the driveway being a specific color or being poured concrete or not being poured concrete, we can live with that. I wanted to note that it's not really visible to anybody. The property is high enough up on the hillside that it has views, but it's very difficult to actually get a picture of it from any location below. Just the way it's set up there on the hillside. I think Renee actually drove around and found one place where she could actually take a snapshot where it would be seen, but that back driveway is just not very visible. And similarly, the plan was to go with it's almost a dark brown color on the trim of the windows. And also, as someone mentioned earlier, it is compliant with Title 24. So yes, we've addressed that, and that's a non-issue at this point. So happy to address any other specific questions, but I just wanted to cover those few points.
Does the board, anybody on the board have a question?
I do. So for clarity, Will, this is Stuart Summers, board member Summers. The color you said of the trim of the windows was dark, and how about the color of the sash, the actual metal frames? Are they indeed a dark, like a bronze color?
Yeah, I always think of bronze as lighter than these actually are, but they're it's a brown, I guess, is probably the best way to
Okay,
describe
fair
it.
enough. Your renderings, the way they've been rendered, they depict them actually kind of white or almost silver. So, we'll certainly, we don't want to see that. We'd like to see the darker color that blends in better. So as in one of the other renderings. So that's great. And on the driveway, I mean, it sounds like you're pretty flexible. And I understand that it's mostly for your own benefit, but I'd certainly would, I don't want to get into recommendations yet, but like a split face block that's got something with some texture, I think would be just a lot more pleasant. That's just an opinion. I don't know if you'd consider those, but it sounds like you're open to some items.
Absolutely. Yeah, that has not been set in stone at all. So if the board has recommendations on that, and I can certainly take into account what you just said when
Okay.
we move forward with it.
That answers my questions.
Does the board have any further questions? Nope, seeing none. The chair opens the public hearing and I remind the public that you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, so if you're on Zoom and you would like to provide public comment on this project, just raise your hand. If you're on phone, press *9, or if you're in the audience, go ahead and come up to the microphone. Not seeing anyone on Zoom and not seeing anyone in the audience.
Okay, I'm about to close the meeting unless there is public interest in speaking. I close the public hearing. I ask the board members whether they have any comments. Should I go in order? Okay.
You're the chair.
I'll start. I
Yeah.
don't mind.
You get to assign people.
Nice.
I'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
I like the design. I like the darker color from the original application. I like the corner of the wall for the pool is moved out beyond the house. So the pool surround wraps around the house. I think that's a more interesting design. I mean, it's a unique site in that it's on the hillside, but you got lucky and you have that already prepared flat building envelope there and you took advantage of it and that all makes sense. So at this point, we really don't have a landscape plan. We have 3 trees. You have bioswales. I mean, they're planted that, that you need to at some point indicate what you're planting in there. There's BASMAA. What is that? Bay Area Stormwater Management Agency Association. In their handbook, they have suggestions on how to plant bioswales. So you'll want to refer to that. The Parkinsonia that's listed on the drawing is native to southeastern California and Arizona. Actually doesn't grow in our zone, so that's not going to work. But a couple things you might consider is Melaleuca levigatum and Tristania larina. And then I also think that's a 17-foot tall wall there, and I don't think those 3 trees are going to be enough to screen it. So I'd add additional 5 shrubs down there. You already have irrigation, so it'll be pretty simple. A couple of good choices might be Arctostaphylos, Howard McMinn, or Ceanosus dark star. They're all California. I'll give it to you.
Okay.
They're all California natives. They're deer resistant. That's the other thing you need to think about is I'm sure you got deer roaming the site. So unless it's deer resistant, they're going to get swallowed up. The concrete driveway wall, I think you can do better than concrete blocks. You can add text, if you support concrete wall, you can add texture with your forms. You can throw a little color in there and make it a little more interesting. I would definitely consider that. And lastly, you have some invasives on the property, broom and some pampas grass. So they should be aware of that and that needs to be removed. And I believe that's all I have.
Sarah?
So let's see, I'll start with the retaining walls on the street. I agree that I think something textural like formwork, board formed or something could be interesting. I think the value of concrete without a color or without paint is usually pretty light. So that's concerns me. I think it should be closer to the building color. Not exactly, but maybe a shade or something so that it's not reflective in any way or bright. I agree. I like the design overall. I have Title 24 questions, but it appears those have been answered. I like the idea of more planting. I will leave it to Jeff to the types, but it seems like in the rendering on page A201 that those, that's pretty representative of not enough screening for the wall of that size. So I think if it's additional shrubs and a different type of tree that provides that screening, that's really important. And then on the brown color, it looks like it blends in. It seems pretty dark to me, but I don't have any particular objections to it.
Go ahead.
I think all the points I was going to make, it's already been covered. I agree with all that. The only time I've ever used this tree was in Scottsdale. I think this year it would have drowned after our first 2 months of rain. So it'd be good to change that out, but I have no problem with the walls or the color.
Stuart?
Yeah, I was hoping our landscape people would go first because that's above my pay grade. So I totally agree. The more screening and the appropriate species as indicated. I'm not sure if that needs to get reviewed again or brought back on consent or work with staff. I don't know how that appropriately gets, maybe we can debate that. The color is much better. I like the design. I was thinking about the retaining wall and it's, this 17-foot tall wall on one hand, but the way it's designed here, it's almost like it's part of the building. Like we ask on Hillside Designs for buildings to be stepped, even though this is a retaining wall for the pool, it's sort of in the spirit of that stepping, it works. And to me, that was my takeaway is like the massing of that works as if it was actually part of the building. So that pretty much won me over. But yeah, the more screening, the solar, that's nothing we're allowed to discuss anyway by state law. So I'm sure you're going to need it anyways. This new energy code that's just coming down the pipe and all this stuff, you're going to need 8 million batteries and lots of solar to be on this house. And I fully agree that retaining walls should really be, a split face or a board form concrete. I'm worried about it being painted because as time goes on, if the paint wears, it's just going to be a nonstop maintenance item. So if there's some color introduced, it really should be in the pigment of whatever the material is. So and that's going to honestly be a favor to the owner as well. So, and then the tank, if that tank comes back and needs to be above ground, I think then for any reason whatsoever, then the owner needs to be on notice that that above ground tank's got to come back before the design review process. Because it will be a massive structure if it ends up above ground. So those are my comments.
Board Member Alexin?
Great, I agree with what's been said, especially on the texture on the retaining wall along the driveway. I think some sort of texture, the same texture can also be applied to the large pool wall as well with additional planning than what's been rendered so far, as we've already talked about. I like the color. I think once you actually look at the actual materials, it may seem too dark. As the applicant mentioned, they could look at, very varied shades of that, but I'm pleased with what we see here.
All right, my comments. I agree with the driveway needing texture and color. I don't have a problem with that wall at all. And, the tightness of the curve and everything, all that'll be worked out in the building permit process. I agree. There is not enough screening on that 17-foot wall. I still think the 17-foot wall needs something to step or slope, or it could be part of the cut and fill, but 17 feet is too tall and 3 trees doesn't come close to addressing the problem. So I would like to see a landscape plan as we asked for last time to, show us how can we screen this. And I do think the color is better. I think it's a little dark, but we can work in that frame. And the trees have to be native. We can't have a tree that's not native. Solar is required since 2020. Any new building, new house in California, you're going to have solar. So it would be good to see how that looks on the elevations and the plans. And the only thing that really bothers me is that 17-foot wall. And it needs more. So to summarize, I think we're all in agreement about, or were you going to summarize, Jeff?
Yeah, I can take a shot at that.
Okay.
Just to clarify one thing, the 17-foot retaining wall, so that requires design review because it's technically considered an accessory structure on a hillside lot. However, that is actually requiring admin design review. So it doesn't actually require DRB input, but what we're doing is we're just asking for your input anyway, since it's already coming to you. However, I don't think we have the ability to require them to go back and revise the plans and come back to the DRB, since it's actually not an item that's part of your purview.
Okay.
But I'm happy to take a shot in terms of, it sounds like we have varying types of comments around the wall for the driveway. In large part, I'm hearing some type of board formed or poured concrete. Am I hearing that that's the generally more accepted,
An intrinsic color.
and with an intrinsic color that's introduced in it and not painted?
I think it's textural, board formed or concrete blocks that have like a smaller unit.
Yeah, there's all kinds of really nice, it's like split face concrete blocks that just have a texture. So I'll leave it up to the owner to decide if he wants to go with a split face concrete block or a board form, but we don't want to see smooth painted concrete.
Okay, so the board's in general consistency on that, and that the colors introduced as part of the material and more in the brown range and not in the gray range. Okay.
Yes.
I think for landscaping, what I'll do is try to get more of a download from member Kent in terms of the species on the trees and the 5 shrubs that you want introduced.
Yeah, something around that number, 5, 7, somewhere in there. It should be drawn out and should be looked at. I mean, I'm just kind of estimating without doing any real work. But I can work with staff on that if you'd like. And it wouldn't necessarily have to come back to the board if the
Okay.
board's happy with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, landscaping improvements as to be worked out with member Kent and staff. Okay.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I'd like to call for a vote.
And sorry, Chair, one thing that we discussed at our last meeting, that a practice that we haven't been doing that we want to start doing more of, is giving the applicant the opportunity to just comment before we actually make the actual motion. It's part of the DRB rules of order, just so they can ask any clarifying questions or.
Is that right here in the script?
No, I should update the script. So that's on me.
From a legal standpoint, just, this item, I don't anticipate it being an issue, but if we have a controversial item with a lot of comment from the public, at least the way I've been taught legally is the moment we let the applicant speak again or ask questions of clarification, that we must open the public portion of the meeting again for the public to respond to any additional comments the owner has made. So has that been vetted out through our legal? Because we could end up with, not tonight, but on a controversial item, we could be here till 2 a.m. if we keep doing this.
Yeah, I've discussed with my superiors, and that their take is it's actually not public comment, since it's sort of part of the agenda, so to speak. But I am working internally with our city attorney just to
Yeah,
just
I
to
would
double.
check it out with
yeah.
Epstein and those folks, because they were pretty clear about that in the past. So
Okay, absolutely. I'll
we just don't want 8-hour meetings. That's all.
no, absolutely no. I'll report back next meeting on a confirmation. So if it's all right with everyone, I'll let the applicant provide any comments. So Will, if you want to comment or have any questions.
Yeah, no, I just appreciate all the feedback, and yes, I will, the pigment in the wall, not an issue. I'll look at the different textures on that wall. And as far as the landscape, I couldn't agree with you more. I actually, one of my comments to Renee was, why aren't these native California species in the approved list? So if we can get, if you can work, if Kent and the staff could work and suggest particular vegetation that should be there, I'm absolutely happy to do that. Happy to implement that. So yeah, no issues there.
So now we ask for a vote.
Absolutely.
Ask for a motion.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll move, this board member Summers, I will move that we recommend approval of the project to the ZA with the conditions as detailed by staff.
Is there a second?
Member Kent seconds.
So it's passed.
Uh,
Oh, wait, we have to.
No,
vote, sorry.
sorry, the next line is, if Chair Kowalski asked board members if they would like to have any discussion on the motion.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a vote.
Okay. Board member Alexin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kent,
Aye.
Chair Kowalski,
Aye.
Board member Reggie,
Aye.
member Summers.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, the motion is passed. Next, we'll move on to the director's report.
I don't have a lot, just for those of you who weren't able to attend last DRB meeting a couple weeks ago. There was a project at 1515 4th Street that got recommended for moving forward, and that's going to Planning Commission on April 11th. And then the Wild Care project also received a recommendation, and I don't have a date yet for when that's going to go to Planning Commission. So that's all I have.
Okay. Are there any board communications to staff at this time?
Well, the next meeting, or do we have agenda items in 2 weeks?
I do not have anything I'm aware of. No.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, the meeting is adjourned.
You
did
great.
Thank-
That's your first.
Well, that's- You have to fix this.
You'll get it.